Hey everybody, it's Eric, and thank you for checking out another HatchetCast podcast. And today we are going to be talking about a lot of current events that have recently happened, specifically things about the network outage that happened specifically with AT&T, some of the movies that have been recently coming out to kind of gear the public towards what's coming. But make sure you grab a cup of coffee, buckle up, and sit down at the table with us and join us for this conversation. So starting off, we got Seth in the studio with us today. And also, as our usual, we have Chris. Chris, what kind of shirt you got on?
It's a shirt that says "Don't Stop Believing," and it has a Sasquatch on there walking.
I like how to look down to see what kind of creature it was.
Yeah.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long day. I just wanted to confirm the creature of what it was.
It's a dragon.
It's a dragon.
Oh. We also got Roy over here on the switchboard, so yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Yeah. New setup. Hope you guys like it. So we're still playing around with it some.
Seth made this freaking amazing locker thing. It's amazing.
It's great.
So eventually here in another week, we'll have one on this side right here too to match it.
Yeah.
Should look really clean.
It looks
So just pretend that it's there for today.
Seth made that in his yard.
Yeah, he did.
Seth, what is your process on making that in your yard?
Had my 12-year-old son, basically. Yeah, just move that over there.
So for everybody that hasn't had the opportunity to meet Seth, go give a quick intro to yourself.
Yes, yeah.
My name is Seth. Been training met you guys first class at JTAC Ranch, and been hanging out with you and bugging you ever since.
Yep.
About 2 years now.
Now he likes to take claim that he makes our coffee.
I do make your coffee.
But he does a lot more.
Listen,
than that.
I'm pretty
So
proud
Pretty
of
much
the
everything that you guys order on our website, at some point in time, Seth has touched your package.
Yeah, exactly. He's also the inventor of the individual first aid kit. So that was Seth's creation. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. We actually recently last week, a lot of people, especially on the East Coast, experienced a network outage, specifically with AT&T, and the authority said it was a solar flare. I guess solar flares have the ability to select what service provider they target. So, what are your thoughts on? First off, who here has AT&T, and what was your experience when it first happened?
I do not have AT&T, but that is news to me that they actually.
You got Boost Mobile?
No, Cricket. So
Wireless.
and I'm thinking of switching to Mint Mobile.
Mint Mobile.
So, no, I have Verizon,
Nice.
and that's actually the first time that I've heard that they came out and said it was a solar flare, which is interesting.
But I do believe other carriers were affected by it, correct?
Yeah, there were some. I guess there were some Verizon users that were affected by it, and I think someone else, maybe some T-Mobile.
I know T-Mobile was affected by it because I have T-Mobile, and a few of my family members that are on my plan were affected by it. So
T maybe.
Yeah. So actually, Seth was directly affected by it.
Yeah. There's actually 50 other companies, over 50 other companies that were
Really.
having issues that day.
And yours actually, you came into the office that day.
Yeah. And it was not working at all.
And your wife, she was Seth and his wife just had a baby. Well, technically, Seth's wife had a baby.
Yeah.
But and she was potentially ready to go to the hospital, right? And your service
I was like,
down.
hey, if anything changes, just give me a call, shoot me a text, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I get to the office. I'm like, my phone's not working.
Yeah.
So you were completely unaware of it, right? You didn't find about it until you came in the office, and I was like, hey, you heard about the service was down?
Yeah, I was resetting my phone. I was troubleshooting it, and I was like, it's probably just having some problems. And then you let me know that. I was like, oh, well,
So
there
it was
it goes.
obviously it was definitely real.
So what is besides, obviously we know it's not a solar flare.
Mm-hmm.
Why was there a network? Okay, here let me throw in this tidbit of information. Elon Musk, the day before AT&T had this outage, did a X post, and it said this is a test, and the comments were disabled. And like either a few hours later or the next day, the service provider went out.
Well, SpaceX had issues too. So,
So
But
he
did
knew it
they
was
know?
coming.
Did they know? Yes. Did they know it was coming?
I think anybody in that field knows it's coming and knows it's possible. We've been talking about China having access to our power grid and small attacks and stuff like that. We're not privy to everything they're doing, but clearly it seems we do not have the protection we'd like to think we have.
Did you hear about the thing with speaking of the cyber attacks, did you hear that the FBI said that China had a massive foothold in our infrastructure network that has like our electricity, power grids, gas, nuclear stuff, where they had actually hacked it and had been in the network for the past 5 years, and they are just now finding out about it.
I mean, when you order whatever tech product, you know, to build whatever, and it's built in China,
Yeah.
you got to think they're coming up with some creative ways to sneak things in there.
Seth, that's a lot of common sense, man. I don't know if we can handle that in this room.
Yeah, I don't think our society can handle.
Yeah,
that.
The funny thing is, I saw Chris the next morning at the gym, and on the televisions there, their AT&T, it took them over 12 hours to fix the problem.
Right.
But that morning, they were like, AT&T rules out cyber attack. It's amazing that you could just rule that out that quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think it was a cyber attack, or was it like them shutting down the network to see how does the public react to a full-blown shutdown?
I think it was a cyber attack, and actually Eric Prince talked about this. You obviously know who Eric Prince is.
Yeah, so he's the guy. He's the owner of Blackwater.
Yeah, so the owner of Blackwater, I guess, came out and was like, he's like 70% sure it was China, and he's under the belief, and other people are under the belief too, that this is just part of the first stage, and it's going to be continuous to get us used to it. So, you know, becoming a normal thing. So maybe it's cell phones one time, maybe it's something else a different time, and it's just like, it's already getting us acclimated to it, so we don't really realize what's going on until, you know, it's almost like the frog in the pot, like turning it up 1 degree at a time before we realize, hey, this is happening every day, and this is like major stuff going on. So it's like, maybe it's not like an EMP all at once, or maybe it's not like a cyber attack of all the grid or all the systems, but you have cell phones the one day, all right? Maybe you have, you know, computer programs another day. Maybe you have 2 of those. Maybe you have 3 things go down. And it's just a thing where it just becomes a normal thing that we all deal with, and we all have to go along to get along, kind of like COVID, honestly.
I think part of me is always thinking in the back of my mind, like, why not just do a 100% cold shutdown all at the same time? And then that alone causes so much weight on the emergency services systems, because this AT&T outage actually affected, like Todd was saying, you know, he's our medical instructor. He was like, hey, 911, people weren't able to dial 911 and get a response. Right. So like you have there's a huge gap between the ability for emergency services to respond to situations, to fires, to electrical things catching on fire because there's no power or a meltdown. That happens all across the country, all at the same time. You've overloaded the services. Crime goes up as a byproduct of that. Looting happens, rioting happens, shootings happen, police can't respond. Like, that's, in my opinion, what makes more sense versus just doing a slow boil and getting people used to it. And then once you get used to that, then you can kind of come up with contingencies and prepare and things of that nature. So part of me wonders if they are either doing things to test, kind of see what is the response that's going to happen, how fast are they going to respond, or is it just maybe that is the plan?
Well, I think our government has allowed China to do it. There's no other way, right? Like, why would you allow China to be so tightly knit in our infrastructure, buying up land, buying up all the tech resources, like this possibility of a super, you know, major hack? It's like, you can't slip up this many times. It's like they're allowing it to happen. Again, it kind of goes back to my premise. If you can allow that to happen, that allows the government to come in as the savior, right? The government to come in, take more of your rights away, take more power away from the people, slowly pour power back into the government, and it just becomes more bloated and just more controlling of everyone's lives. I mean, that's their play. And I always see it that way. It's like, think about Donald Trump. Do you think this would have happened under Donald Trump? Like him, love him, or hate him, do you think this would have happened under Donald Trump?
No.
Or do you think that he would have had stronger reactions to what went on if he knew it was China? Absolutely, right? So right. You may hate the guy, you may love him, but, you know, I think we're still in the driver's seat with these things. So it's like, I don't see any other way as to like them just like allowing it to happen continuously. All
right, let's just talk about a hypothetical here. What happens if GI Jose stays in power for another 4 more years, where will we be as a country 4 years from now?
21 feet underground. In bunkers. I mean, in homemade bunkers after we raid Home Depot because there's no other
In
way.
Minecraft.
In Minecraft.
I mean, like, seriously, like, what do you think would happen the first year of his second term if he was to be replaced back in power?
I think all of these foreign powers are going to get more aggressive, with taking obviously power away from the United States. But so fast forward all the problems that we have now, like escalated 4 years from now, right? So we've had a border open for 3 years. Imagine another 7 years of the border being open. You know what I mean? Like we've already had situations. I don't know if you guys heard about that story in Georgia where that girl got murdered.
Yeah, there's also
There's a few.
Yeah, there's a couple of rapings,
and it was someone who had a record and snuck in through the border. And the mayor of, I think it was Atlanta, was like, it's not because we're a sanctuary city. And the people that were at the meeting booed him and shouted him down and were calling him a liar, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, bro, this is a direct relation to what you have and your policies that you have going on in your city. I mean, that's one layer of it, right? The bigger layer is the borders open. It shouldn't have happened to begin with. So if you close the border, sanctuary cities don't really exist, right? Right or wrong.
Right.
So I just find it really fascinating. It's just, again, it's continuously allowed to happen, but like those are situations that I think about a major problem like the open border. Like think about that problem 7 years of just continuous of what that looks like.
Here's what I'll tell you right now. You want to talk about frog in a boiling pot? We are all frogs in a boiling pot, and we're sitting in the boiling pot knowing that it's boiling, and we're looking at the top of the pot going, I'm so frustrated I'm in this boiling pot. You know what I'm saying? That's where we're at. Like that's where I feel like, cool, this happened, but what is the byproduct? Is it going to be like in Europe? They're literally spraying poop on freaking politicians' houses in front of the European Union in Brussels. They literally used their tractors and knocked down the police barricades and sprayed manure and poop, and now they're building a concrete wall in front of the entrances of their politicians' houses. It's gonna have to get to that point.
Yeah. Why? My question for the group is, why do you think that they're so much more aggressive than we are? We have stuff happen in America all the time, and people kind of lay back on their lazy boys and are like, oh, well, we'll get them next time. And they're like, no. Like even like a small increase in taxes and I realize that they've been taxed out the wazoo already, right? So they're almost kind of at that level where they're fed up and they're almost beyond saving, even more so to the point of our country. But it seems like they respond more aggressively. You know what I mean?
I think we're complacent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're just cruising through life, cruising through the day with the blinders on. We don't want to look any other direction. You know,
100%.
We're unaware of our history anymore, right? I mean, how many people you could sit down and have a conversation about true American history anymore?
Can't. Mostly the boomers, but who wants to talk to them? Just kidding.
Hey, stop shooting so fast. One round every 5 seconds.
We at least have 3 boomers that listen, Chris. So you just
Hey,
isolated.
to all the boomers out there, I am an 85-year-old man in a 35-year-old body, so I am with you as far as a boomer.
That you are, Chris. No, I honestly feel like the American culture is just completely complacent.
Yeah,
I think it's complacent.
Yeah.
I agree.
In all aspects of life, whether it's within your Lord, within your firearms, within your firearm regulations, your God-given rights, your Constitution. We're just complacent in anything, and that's why it continues. They just continue to dabble and continue to test how far can I push it, and I just continue to take it away. Where other countries have already had it taken away.
Right.
They know what it feels like. They know exactly what it is, and they fight back.
You want to talk about
throw poop on you.
complacency? Right. How many people signed up for the brace thing?
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's a good temperature gauge.
Yeah, they were coming through the doors like crazy, asking me, hey, how do I register my firearm? How do I give the government, this because they're going to give me a free SBR.
The funny thing was when they were like, that sounds like a trap, right? Right? By the way, how do I do this?
Seth was in the store witnessing most of this, and they would come in. It's like, yeah, that doesn't sound like I should probably do that. Sounds like a trap. But by the way, what's the process, just in case I decide to do it? And then 2 days later, they're back in the store.
You shouldn't even be talking them out of that decision.
No, honestly,
right?
honestly, I stopped talking people out of it.
Right.
It's just like, hey, yeah, give me $45 and I'll do this paperwork for you. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, if you're,
Gosh, dude.
Dead set on doing it.
There were a handful that walked out after Roy told them that, and like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to do it. 2 weeks later, they're, yeah, I did all 4 of mine.
I mean,
Not an issue.
I would steer them in the direction of like, guys, this is not going to stick. It's
Right.
It's not going to, and consequently, what has happened?
Yeah.
It's been overturned.
Yeah.
So
It's actually in SCOTUS right now.
yeah.
For the braces, anyways.
Which makes me lose hope for SCOTUS because of how they ruled in that Texas thing with the border.
Yes.
You've lost your minds. You've shown your hand at that point. It's
What did
like,
they wash their hands of it, basically? Or how did they rule?
No, they said that the federal government was in the right about Eagle Pass.
Oh, really?
And that the Texas
Was it
the
unanimous?
Texas border guards had to remove the razor wire.
Wow, I haven't even heard that yet.
Yeah, bro, that happened like 3 weeks ago. That was the what's that justice lady?
Ketanji Brown?
No, Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
She's the one that voted against saying, "Yep, Texas got to remove the razor wire." Blah 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 blah. It's like, dude, back in the day, they would take you out and tar and feather you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm reading a book my brother gave me about Henry Knox, who...
The Noble Train.
The Noble Train, who is a guy who was a bookseller in Boston who basically volunteered to do the most miserable job in the cause of the American Revolution by dragging thousands and thousands of pounds of cannons across New York in the dead of winter to get it to Boston so that George Washington could use the artillery to push the British out of Boston. And nobody wanted to do it, but he obviously volunteered. No one's even fighting in wintertime at that time just because it's like, it's impossible. You're not going to get anything accomplished. So this guy does that, and it's just like, those are the type of go-getter people that are willing to put it all on the line. He just married his wife, who was an aristocrat, who was connected with the English family that was living in Boston, and basically left her entire family to join his cause while she's pregnant. And so, like, I don't see a whole lot of that type of action, obviously. And we're talking about 1776. I get it, that's a long time ago. But it takes people willing to lose everything for a cause. Mm-hmm. And there's just, I feel like people in the podcasting industry who are speaking out about this stuff are typically speaking in an echo chamber, but I'm tired of the talk. Like, it's just, at the end of the day, it's talk, and it's good. You're waking a few people up, but most people that are listening in those podcasts, you're talking into an echo chamber. They already agree with you.
Yeah.
You're not changing anyone's mind. It's like,
everyone that's listening to us probably agrees with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But that's, I mean, again, but it's like, you guys talk about, like, voting and voting our way out of this and voting for new politicians, and you got to go out there and vote, and it's like, no one's addressing the elephant in the room. It's like, folks, we're way past that. I mean, you're talking about just voting in more corrupt people in exchange for already corrupt people. I mean, that's not...
See, that's the thing, though. It's like, but what do you... So the answer, obviously, also is to not go vote, because at the end of the day, if there's enough people that have that same saying, like, well, this doesn't do anything anyways, then obviously it's an easy win for that as well. So I think you still go through the process of going and doing your part voting, but at the same time saying it's a broken system, and then identifying things that can be a fix. Like, you have to... I don't think the answer is to not go vote because it's broken. You know what I'm saying? I think you still go do that just in case it's like, okay, maybe it does make a difference, but at least I did my part in terms of that capacity. The other side is just kind of lazy.
Yeah.
In my reality, well, it's just another reason for me not to go to this appointment, right? So it's like, take the time out of your day to go do that, and the other time, the reason why this side of America, and I think the blue collar side, the collar side, that's the working man, the working family, the people who have morals and actually do things for a living to support their family and their loved ones are too busy trying to support their family and their loved ones. They don't have the time to go and get involved in politics while everybody's been asleep, or excuse me, not asleep, while everybody's been working hard and doing things like that. The other side, who had all the time in the world, who are in these college echo chambers or wherever, these places where they're living in the basement of their parents' house, are the ones going out with the free time to go and get involved in local politics. And now see where we're at. And now we're at a position where I think that the saving grace for this nation is going to be the state government system. It's going to be the local politics system, because there's at least, you still have sway in that. You can still go to that council meeting and look the person that got elected in the face and say, yo, jabroni, what's going on? Like, why have you done this? And then you get a mob in there and you say, hey, this is enough. You're out. Like, we're done with you. And you start at the lower level, the council member seats, the school board of education seats. Like, those toadstools are out, and that's how you influence it. Because you have to, at the end of the day, the federal government is not run, sadly, it's not run by Congress. It's not run by the president. It's not run by it's not run by SCOTUS. It's run by the agencies. Every 3-letter or 4-letter agency, those are the people running the federal government, to the point where the president of Russia, did you guys watch the interview?
Yeah.
All right.
With,
the president of
Tucker.
Russia frickin' says, hey, I'd like to join NATO in the 90s. For everybody who didn't watch the interview, go watch the interview. It's worth watching. Not because it's like, oh, Putin's right or whatever. At the end of the day, I don't give a rip. I don't care. I don't care if Putin's right or wrong. What I care about is the American side. I care about us in this country. You know what Putin cares about? He cares about Russians. He doesn't give a rip about Americans, and he shouldn't. He's a president of Russia. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you think he's right or wrong. He's doing what he thinks is right for his people. Just like I think that what's sad about the Ukrainian thing is I feel like NATO is dictating what happens in Ukraine, not the Ukrainian people. And so the president of Russia in the 90s, when Bill Clinton was president, Bill Clinton goes to have dinner with him, or meets up with him. And he asked Bill, he says, what's the process? Could Russia join NATO? You know, the Cold War's over. The Soviet system is gone. We're trying to push towards a more westernized system, more free trade, or whatever system, but a lot more free than what they had. And Bill Clinton is like, yeah, I don't see why not. You know, absolutely. Let me go talk to some people. Goes back, talks to his agencies, comes back at dinner with a dog with its tail tucked in between its legs, and says it can never happen. So at that point, Putin goes, okay, that's fine. That's a fact of life. What you should be taking away from that is the president of the United States was told no about a system between another world leader, another leader of another country. The president of the United States was told that can never happen. And what did he do? He did what he was told. So at the end of the day, what that tells me, and it also tells the president of Russia and everybody else in the world stage, the president has no power.
Yeah, why bother even talking with you?
And that's why when Putin says, hey, I want to hear the answer from the CIA, when he talked to the KGB, and he's asking, all right, what's the answer from the CIA? Because Putin knows who runs this country. It's the agencies. It is not the judicial system. It's not the president, executive branch. Politics at this point is a formality. It's too far gone.
At the federal level.
At the federal level.
I mean, if we look the past 20 years, our gun rights have gotten better.
Yeah.
You know, we have more freedoms, really. I mean,
that's because the states have gotten involved.
Correct. And it's only because we know what true freedom is. Now we see what we can have, what we should have, as per the Constitution. So now that's what we're comparing it to. But, you know, early 90s, that's crazy where we are now.
The FUD culture almost killed the Second Amendment.
I mean, look at Trump. Trump's the one who put through the brace ban.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, again, federal bureaucracy, you know, at its finest, you know, pushing things through, trying to make things better. That it doesn't work that way. I think there's still hope, like you said, on the state level.
Yeah.
Because the states have the power. If they don't like what's going on, they can break away. They can make treaties. You know, Florida and Texas. I'm confident that Florida and Texas alone could handle themselves.
Yeah. I think that
but there's plenty more states that if it came to that,
Yeah.
I think that I even fall into this trap. Remember when 2020 was happening? Like, I fell into that trap as well of trying to pick hero, right? And we have to guard ourselves from picking that hero to fill the executive position that's going to change everything. That's not going to happen. It's not.
It's from the people.
It is. It is from the people, and it starts at the state level. You want to see change and affect change, it happens in the state level. I think, honestly, the most powerful positions you could possibly get into is in the governor's office for the state that you're in.
Local sheriffs.
Local sheriffs, dude.
Yeah, it's huge.
Sheriffs play such a huge role. I mean, you've seen what has happened with local sheriffs in certain areas where we
get great judge.
on a federal level, they're trying to pass bans. Local sheriff is like, I'll just deputize everybody in my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be. It should be the churches, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really
yeah.
should. That it should. The way the community anywhere should be tapped directly from the churches. And that, to answer your question, when is the time? Your brother says it best. It's almost, we're waiting for God's authority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what it really comes down to. Whether you believe or not, that's the reason nobody's doing anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I think there's still time. I think there's still things we can do until we are given that authority.
Yeah. I will say the one thing that, the popular topic obviously is civil war and all this type of stuff. War is terrible enough, and for those who can see it, it is terrible enough where I'm willing to exhaust every every feasible possible option. If I have to go out and beg on the streets, if that's the way to do it, then that's what I would do. Like, it's that bad. And it's something that, because at the end of the day, you're fighting not for you're fighting for your kids, and what kind of life are they going to have,
Yeah, you're talking about, the story that I was talking to you guys before, you want to talk about local government and how local government matters. Well, here's a story that happened in California just recently. So a woman who lives in California, I guess, smoked a lot of weed, smoked a lot of cannabis.
You don't say.
Who thought?
Yeah, right. California, right. Yeah. Smoking weed? Nah. She smoked a lot of cannabis, devil's lettuce, and she got into an altercation with her husband, and she stabbed her husband 108 times. So she went to court. Again, this is California. We all are kind of familiar with their judicial system. She got 2 years probation. No joke.
Did he die?
He died.
Okay.
2 years probation, no jail time, and 100 hours of community service because the judge ruled that she was outside of her mind. She couldn't decipher right and wrong because she had too much cannabis in her system.
But if a man had broken into her home to attack her,
she would have to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
that's true,
stabbed
yeah.
him even just 10 times, an appropriate amount of times, she would have faced far steeper consequences, I'm sure.
Yeah, she literally murdered somebody and she got out with no jail time. Like, that is absolutely wild. So to your guys' point about local government, how that matters, like, if that were in Polk County and we're talking about Grady Judd, like,
she would have had the book thrown.
Oh
at her.
my gosh,
Yeah.
she would have, like,
doesn't matter.
death penalty for that. Like, just the full extent of the law. And like, Grady Judd's always big on, like, I don't believe in non-violent, drug offenders. Drug offenders are like some of the most violent ones, which is true. They can be. But this is a circumstance where clearly this is a violent drug offender who murdered her own husband brutally and didn't get a single day in jail.
Think about that. That's
If you're a criminal,
times.
think of-
108 times.
If you're a criminal in California, it's just like
108 times. That's not from being high on dope. I mean, that's a crime of passion.
Right.
There is so much thought behind that you're just so angry or whatever it is that's possessed you, whatever has entered your mind when that's going down. You stab someone 108 times. That is full intent that you did that 108 times.
Right.
It's not from marijuana.
yeah.
I mean, your finger would be tired if you shot someone 108 times.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just replace that. What if she was drinking?
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
Sure.
What would it have been?
Exactly. If she was drinking, they wouldn't have. I guarantee you, they wouldn't have found it that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's California, so
Dude,
Yeah,
I
who
don't know
knows?
what goes on in that place, bro. Like I don't understand.
Yeah,
Illinois and
so you can't even go to a
California.
Walmart now without a facial recognition system because crime is so high. Mm-hmm. Crime is so high inside Walmart that they have facial recognition systems where the doors are locked, and it reads your face and determines if you can come through the doors or not.
So here's what's crazy.
Really?
At this point, it's like if you have no morals, you know, it would make sense to not buy anything. Just go in and grab what you want and leave.
Yeah.
I mean, there was people in Walmart where they would literally go into Walmart and were teaching their kids to just open the food, sit down on the floor in Walmart, and just start eating the food.
Yeah, they can't stop you.
Yeah, they can't stop
They
you.
can't stop you. So I guess if you're hungry.
I mean, that's how it starts as far as like states literally falling apart. Nobody wanting to live there. Great example of that is New York City.
Oh my gosh.
No one.
What does New York City smell like? Roy?
What did I compare it to the other day? I forgot. Chris, you talk about a cesspool.
Yeah.
That's what New York. It smells like a toilet bowl. It smells like you open the top of a septic tank. Anyone ever?
I had a
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
A septic tank. You open the top of the septic tank because you got to have it pumped out. That's what it smells like. It just smells like that.
Were you there recently?
This was actually probably what is this? I'm gonna say about 6 to 7 years ago, and it still smelled like a.
Right.
Oh, I can't imagine what it smells like now.
Terrible.
Yeah. The amount of garbage, and no offense to anybody that lives in New York City, but New York City is different than the state of New York. Like,
Oh yeah.
you start getting upstate New York, everything like that. We spent some time in Cooperstown, all that, and man, but the city, you go to the city thinking that okay, I'm going to see all this great stuff. You go, to go to the memorial, go to everything else, and you're like in the middle of the city, like Manhattan and Times Square, and it is like the ground itself that you walk on. You ever walk into a Waffle House?
Yeah.
And
Floor is all sticky.
It's all sticky,
Yeah.
like
Syrup everywhere.
syrup everywhere. It's like the ground itself is sticky underneath you. You can hear it sticking to the bottom of your soles of your shoes,
Gosh.
and it's just
That's nothing bad about Waffle House. Waffle
no.
House is
I love
great.
Waffle House,
But your city should not feel like a Waffle House floor.
your ground that you walk on in your city should not be that disgusting.
Yeah, and
Take pride in what
Yeah,
you own. Or
absolutely.
it's yours.
yeah,
At the end of the day,
yeah,
I mean, truthfully, it's not theirs. Their local government
sure
owns
yeah.
it, but
Yeah, but
take it back.
I mean, especially if you're going to give the migrants that come to your city a $10,000 debit card.
Yeah, what is that about?
Yeah.
More than one.
Explain that to me. Like,
What about the homeless people? What about them?
So
That are Americans.
What about them, Eric?
What?
So someone who was it that was telling me that so they'll give you the 10,000 debit card and they're not recording what
Correct. So they're not allowed to identify. They can't ask them for their ID. So they can go up and, oh yeah, I want my $10,000. Okay, what's your name? They give them a name, write it down, whatever. They can go back up an hour, 2 hours later, and just get another one.
And they
They're-
can't-
They don't. They didn't have a system set up to verify who's getting these cards. They just got a blank check. They're pretty much like, here's our budget. What was it, 37 million or something like that? So they're just giving this out.
Here's what we do, guys. Here's what we do. We get in the car. We drive up, and we all go in individually. I'll paint, I'll
don't
shave
even
your
have to.
eyebrows off. I'll just shave your eyebrows off. And people will just think you're from a crazy place.
I wouldn't go to New York for $50,000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. I don't think you would have to do anything to him though. Like they're not going to ask.
Oh, yeah.
they wouldn't.
Honestly,
They
he could. He'd
They
be like,
can't.
They can't ask.
yeah.
Yeah, they
You could
can't.
say you're from like Guam or something.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Give me your best Guam voice.
I don't even know what people from Guam sound like.
You say that every time.
we'll save that for the end.
Yeah.
They sound like Guatemalans.
Oh man, that's even worse. Now you're really confusing me.
Put it in the back of your mind for the end of the show.
There you go. Guam.
Processing.
So, speaking of like things that are just going crazy and just news that is kind of catching us off guard, is like it is that outrageous. You actually got a message, Roy, over the week. Can you talk us about that?
Are we talking about my Cardinal?
Yeah. No. The other one you got on your phone.
yeah. So let me grab my phone out here real quick so I
Yeah.
can.
They're not your spiritual
Not
message.
my
Yeah, not the,
I-
we're on a doom and gloom train.
We're on a doom and gloom. I'm on a spiritual high right now.
We
so-
want
Yeah, that is a good
we
one.
want your big brother message.
Yeah, so I got a big brother message. Actually, some of you guys that follow on IG would have seen it, but let's pull that up real quick. Actually, I'm going to let you read it, Eric, because I don't believe you've actually seen it at all. So
All right.
that way we can kind of.
So I'm assuming so this is the if anybody of you have gone to our classes, anytime that we have a class, we send out a message to you, usually a few days prior or the day prior, with instructions about what to do and whatever for reporting instructions for the class. So it looks like he sent out this message about the class, and it says, this is a text message, right? So text message.
It is a text message.
It says error 3007, carrier violation. The destination carrier is filtering out your messages for delivery. The content of your messages was flagged as going against carrier guidelines.
What?
That's a text message, bro.
Yeah. Now that is on a business line. So it's on a business line that we have here. But I've also heard when I post this on Facebook, or not Facebook, oh my goodness.
MySpace.
MySpace. Yeah. When I put this up on MySpace, on IG, that I had people sending, response back to me and said, hey, I've had similar messages come through on T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon.
You know who bought Signal? Mark Zuckerberg.
No.
Yeah.
I actually use that.
Yep.
Now we got to find something else.
Yep.
Great.
He bought Signal.
So, obviously, they're reading now that, they're just straight up telling us now.
Yeah.
That's smart by them. That's a smart play.
You think?
Because now they're going to filter and censor people's text messages
Yep.
and not social media. So now because the government and these big corporations are in bed together, now, that's the next level. That would be the next step. It's all right, well, you're going to take back X. We're going to start monitoring all of your text messages now and censor those and start flagging those. And if it's something that we don't like, you're not going to be able to send it.
Yeah. Speaking of, you said government. The reason why it seems like the executive branch of our government currently is doing so much and acting so much that's extreme, it's because they're working in cahoots with the agencies. They're going they're pushing the agencies' agendas. Saying, yeah, we'll push it on the executive side. So that's why everything is seamlessly being approved, seamlessly happening, because at the end of the day, it's the companies working with the government agencies.
Yeah, so you mentioned the agencies. I think it's the agencies, but it's the big corporations.
Correct.
It's the corporations, it's the industrial military complex, it's big pharma. Big pharma pulls a lot of strings.
Chris Brown did not kill himself.
I'm not suicidal. So laughs awkwardly. So I think that the agencies are almost like the weapon, and then whoever's holding that is the corporations. They're kind of like the dog on the leash. They have a lot of power, but if they ask, hey, do this, the CIA, the FBI can do all those things without anyone ever knowing that they were the ones that did it. They're the one. It's almost like a hired gun, I think.
So what's the benefit besides, say, for example, talk about agency policies and things of that nature being worked to be very negative against the United States? What benefit does opening the border provide besides getting votes? What is the other byproduct that they want besides getting votes? Let's just bring a bunch of people in to get whatever. But
it rips apart the culture of America.
Yeah.
It destabilizes. We're not even talking about the American dream anymore.
Yeah.
People are hoping they can, have enough money to live in a van down by the river. White picket fences and, even owning a house is a pipe dream for most people. And now people are just wondering, is it worth making a 5-year plan, or are nuclear bombs going to rain down?
Yeah, it's been a complete distraction. I haven't heard anyone actually talk about buying a home in quite some time. Obviously they say the market is still up, but
no, I don't know of anyone talking about buying a home. I hear a lot about renting.
Yeah.
And finding rent, and that's the only option on the table. The only other people that I talk about buying is if they're already owning now.
Yeah.
But the problem is the interest rates are so high. It's like you're going to be trading that for a super duper high interest rate that's going to skyrocket your payment.
Yeah.
Even right now, it's even harder to own because they're jacking up the insurance.
Yeah.
And not only that, the taxes. Full disclosure, our mortgage started out at $950. Now it's over $1,000 per month because the insurance has been jacked up and the taxes have been jacked up. And it's you literally don't own anything. You know, it's,
you never will. I mean,
never
property,
will actually
property
own
taxes
anything.
alone will make sure of that.
yeah. So when they talk about you'll own nothing and be happy, it's like you're already tiptoeing towards that line. I mean, you're basically there. They just have to do a few more things, like try and jack up the cost of living to where it's, like you said, impossible to even make it, where you can't even think about buying a new vehicle or having a single income home. Like, I don't know anyone who has I mean, you do have a single income home, but most people don't have a single income home. You got multiple people working jobs. Then you have to, because you have multiple people working jobs, you got to do daycare, right? You got to pay money for daycare, for childcare, which is that's $300.
It's a mortgage most of the time,
right?
I mean, depending.
Yeah.
I mean, if you choose a place that is going to teach your kid proper moral values and everything like that, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's
You're
through
not
the roof.
scared of them getting abused while you're gone.
Exactly. So not that talking about that. What do you think? So there's a statistic that says that people only remember the last 120 days before an election.
Oh yeah.
So what do you think is going to happen?
Oh, the last 120 days.
Last 120 days. What do you think?
Jeez.
Gas prices go down. Everything's going to seem good, but it'll rapidly. If he,
So we were talking
if
about-
they get in office again.
So we were talking about this the other day. So like, if gas prices hit $3, you get what? You get excited now, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't even think about when it was $2.
Right.
Because that's already too far gone. Like,
Yeah.
you're already too far gone. So they've creeped the prices so high. So if you get this 40-cent drop or 60-cent drop, whatever it is, it's like, that's a discount. That's that's a big break, right? So you go into the grocery store and now you see milk prices down a little bit. You see whatever it may be. You see interest rates drop. They go down for whatever, almost 9% now, probably, right? Interest rates on homes, almost 9%. They drop down to 7%. People start buying like crazy as it is, even though the housing price probably goes up. It dropped to 6 or 7%, whatever it may be. The house price goes up, but people are like, oh, the interest rates are down. Oh, gas prices are down. They see that, and that's what they're going to remember.
Well, I mean, what is money anymore?
Yeah.
Well, what is it?
Yeah, we talked about this weekend.
Yeah, you buy a house now for $500,000. Any given scenario, that house could be worth $1 million next year because of some event. I mean, you don't know. Or they finally, everything catches up and then the, market crashes and then you're stuck holding the bag. A lot of times between elections, not only do things get good, but a lot of times that's because a sweetheart deal's made and then we pay for it on the back end.
Yes.
So everything seems good right before election. And then the next 2-3 years, we're paying for that. We're paying that back pay on it.
You're going to see these backdoor deals go through that are going to pay. Like, I give you this now. We're gonna buy all this fuel from you at this cost. Buy these millions of drums of fuel at this particular cost, but that price is going to be higher. 3 years, it's going to be so high 3 years from now that we're going to be paying $6 a gallon.
Well, I mean, I'm about to say something, and I'm not suicidal. I didn't kill myself. The bill that passed for the Federal Reserve, they no longer have to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And that was on the heels of where everything going on, you would think with the amount of money we're going to debt, like, why would they keep printing money? And then all of a sudden, like, oh, here's a trillion here, here's a trillion there, and we're just giving it away. I mean, and then that gets passed through Congress to allow an entity like that not to pay taxes.
Can you imagine? I want someone challenged. Try writing out that number. $32 trillion or $42 trillion in debt. Can you write that number?
No. Yeah, I don't know how many zeros that is there.
That's a lot of zeros. Dude, I think
They
it's
didn't teach me that much in school.
I didn't go to expensive daycare.
Did you make that number up, Eric?
Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds like it's made up now.
Yeah.
It's
A
not even-
gajillion billion.
gajillion when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And you're telling your mom that you love her and to infinity, gajillion, to billion.
Yeah. Trillion, million, 5. Yeah. Well, speaking of the market crashing, I don't even know at this point if we're going to get out to 120 days.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill Gates, did you hear about this? I saw it on Instagram, so it has to be true. Sold his entire portfolio.
If that is true,
That's terrifying.
that is very terrifying. Like,
Why
that
would
is-
he do that?
That's more terrifying than the cell phones
Why,
going down.
why
cell
would
phone
you
towers.
do it, Chris?
Jeff Bezos sold.
To build an underground bunker somewhere?
No, he could already do that
He
without
probably
doing
does
that.
have multiple underground bunkers.
He's got enough money for that already.
Yeah, so it's really the copper wiring being ripped out of the wall before the house collapses, or they're salvaging whatever they want.
Chris, that is good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
It could also be related to Epstein.
I don't know, because Jeff
a good point.
Bezos also sold, I think it was billions of dollars worth of Amazon stock.
Right. Well,
Jeff Bezos did.
Liquidate everything you're attached to.
Yeah.
Put it into other things that they can't touch if they end up coming after you, even if it's temporary, you know?
It could be that. It could also be with this network outage, with the cyber attack, with the possibility of France sending troops into Ukraine, with the possibility of China and the upcoming election. Like we have all of these different catalysts that are coming to a head on so many different fronts, and now you've got elite, rich turd nuggets that are freaking liquidating all of their stocks and leaving us holding the bag.
That's a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Rich turd nuggets.
Rich turd nuggets.
Back to your point when you're talking about China, Chris, they had also talked about, and I kind of tend to agree with this, they were saying that was kind of just a probe, a recon by fire, or almost a show of force. Like, look what we can do. And it makes sense, depending on, I don't claim to be, a specialist on this, but depending on your securities you have in place and firewalls, certain things can get passed further. So AT&T got hit pretty hard. Other companies probably caught it in time. It was just a soft press. But they did it enough to show, like, hey, don't mess with us. Like, we can do this. Don't play. It was teased. Somebody had the idea that this is probably they're going to make a move on Taiwan, and kind of a warning, like, stay out, or we'll turn off everything you have.
They opened the border. I don't think that we really care about anything that anybody says. Putin has already said, hey, we will shoot nukes if you put foot in Ukraine, or if we lose. If we lose, we'll do that. And what are we doing? All right, let's go ahead and send some more stuff.
Yeah,
And more, it's like there is no stopping. We're literally just not listening to anybody's threats. We're not listening to anybody's thing. We're calling their bluff. Good or bad, that's what we're doing. And I think it's because it's like, I watched the recent Mission Impossible movie, and it was actually pretty good. But it's like the guy, he punches the locomotive engineer, breaks the throttle off, so it's just rushing towards its destruction. And he's like, I'm about to jump off this train, so whatever. Like, that's where we're at. The throttle's been broken off, and the engineer is a puppet.
Yeah, it's a case of an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, right? Like, something's gonna have to break or bend in the wind. Like, Putin's not breaking, right? NATO's not gonna compromise. So it's just like we're all, again, stuck holding the bag of this disaster that could be conscription or getting drafted, God forbid, or, just, in other words, a financial collapse because they just keep printing so much dang money. Stop printing money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, just stop.
Yeah.
And it's like, to your point, it's like, whoa, like, let's take a few steps back. Let's think about what we're doing. And it's clearly not, because the train is barreling down the track and, right, bridge that's not built yet. And we're just going to collide just right off the rails into a cliff.
Just a tire ramping a ramp.
Tire ramping, a flip ramping.
Right. Thanks for bringing that up, guys. my kind of against the grain 120 days. I'm going to go against the grain here.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. So here's my prediction: the last 120 days before the election, nothing happens.
Stays the same.
It stays the same. And I'll tell you why. Trump wins. And that's the catalyst to bring in utter chaos, civil war, and removal, because they think he's a dictator, and that's where the absolute chaos begins.
I don't think he will be able to make. And here's what scares me: is I fear that they fear him enough to where they are willing to do anything to prevent him from being elected.
But what better opportunity now that he's in power? It's like, oh, perfect. Now we can really go full board. Like, he took control. He doubted the last election. We don't know if this election was necessarily on the level. He's back in power. This is the most dangerous president of our lifetime, which is what they're actually saying. And he's back in power. We've got to do something. I go back to, they war gamed it in 2020. John Podesta war gamed it with Hillary Clinton and everyone else in a scenario where Trump won the 2020 election, and California, Oregon, and Washington seceded.
Good.
great. Yeah, I don't want them anyway. They're basically China anyway.
Oh, well, for the guys who live in Washington, there's a lot of good dudes that live behind the lines.
Yeah.
For sure.
There is.
There's a lot of talk about shooters and patriots.
But they are
There's
behind
a lot-
enemy
They
lines.
are behind enemy lines.
There's a lot of good dudes in New York. There's a lot of good dudes in
Sure,
California, all
Yeah.
these places. I mean, we get messages from them all the time.
It goes back to local politics.
Yeah, it's
It
never
goes
the
back to
people.
take
It's
control
always
of
the
your state.
government.
You want to talk about getting authority, though. Imagine living in a state like that, and then all of a sudden your state's just like, oh, yeah, by the way, we're gone. We're out of here. You know where that state, like 100%.
Dude,
you know,
that's
you're
wild to
like,
think
you're like,
Yeah.
here we go, cowabunga. You know, I mean.
Or do you
really.
move? Say, all right, well, I'm leaving this state. Or guys who get stuck in there, and it's like, what happens?
I think for a lot of families, they would probably move. And then
move.
some dudes
I
are
think
like,
you're
okay.
you're already seeing that. You're seeing so many movies or so many families that are already moved to Florida, you know,
Right.
Texas.
Yeah.
Florida's full.
Yeah.
We're full up.
Listen, I've got some cardboard boxes, $50,000.
Yeah.
When do we put a fence up?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, that's the thing. Like, people think that moving is going to be a permanent fix to the problem. It's
Yes,
not.
correct. They move away from it.
It's a temp. Like, they're coming for you too. They're coming for everyone. It's like that's what. Again, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but he says it, and he's right. He's like, they hate me because they hate you. They're trying to get to me because they want to try and get to you. They're trying to get through Alex Jones, right? If they can censor him, they can censor anyone, which we've seen. So it's like they're not putting themselves on a pedestal. They're like, hey, we're all in the same boat, right? We're all in the sinking ship. Like, I'm not some higher person that's going to be, saved from this. It's like they're attacking me because they're eventually going to go for you too. So moving, that's great. That's a great short-term option that you can do to get out of it. But they're going to want to take those policies and implement them here, right? I mean, people who want power and who gain power, what do they want? More power. I mean, that's tale as old as time. So it's like you thinking that you're going to be safe or in a safe haven of Florida, and we have been relatively, obviously we have most of our freedoms here in Florida, and it's been great.
Which we have a lot more of our local system that we need to take back.
Yeah, we do.
Sure. And it's never going to be perfect, but it's like you have to realize, like, at some point you're going to have to hold the line, right?
Yeah.
So I just hope we can do that as a society.
Yeah. I mean,
Talk about taking local system back. I think it starts at the school boards.
yeah, it does because they want your kids.
Correct.
Yeah, they want your kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they want your kids.
I think it starts at the school board.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been there, right, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where it starts. So, and there are actually, if you are in Florida or you're in the central state of Florida, I know as far as like Hillsborough County, there's some good representatives trying to run for the school board that have good Christian values and that need to be put into those places.
I'll tell you right now, if you have strong Christian, a candidate that has strong Christian values, most of the time is usually going to be looking out for you and your family, if you're a Christian or not.
Yep.
Because it goes back to protecting the family unit and preserving morality.
It goes back to finding these leaders or these politicians, these elected politicians, and these individuals that sit in these seats and the roles that are going to really put the people first, because they're going to put Jesus first.
All right.
And then the people follow behind it. That's
Yeah.
what they're going to do. So finding those individuals that start with Jesus first.
Yeah, and I think definitely there's a return to wanting to go back to that normalcy.
Yeah.
Because most people in the 1950s, in the 1960s were family-based Christian households. Most people went to church. Most people read the Bible, and we've gotten so far away from that. And it's like, even people that I hear talk that are like atheists or outside of that circle are kind of circling back to that. The Jordan Petersons, the people like that are looking at Christianity and they're like, wait a minute, these people are actually shown to be happier.
Yeah.
Like, parents who raised children, like their siblings who are raised in a Christian home that have structure are tend to be happier individuals and successful individuals. Like that's an actual statistic. Liberals actually, because they kind of breed fear, and it's more fear-based of like, oh, I'm so scared of climate change, or I'm so scared of this happening, or I'm so scared of white supremacy. You're literally just pushing fear into the child. Fear, 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 fear. So when they grow up, right, they're not happy individuals. They have anxiety. They have depression. And so it was interesting. I watched a Joe Rogan episode with Abigail Schreier, I believe. and she wrote a book talking about how we over therapy kids, which means like therapy's good for a lot of people, and I don't knock anyone taking therapy, but for a child, you're literally just having them focus on their problems all day. Let's talk about your problems. Let's talk about this issue. And it's like they have no escape, and it's not fixing the problem. It's making it worse. Like they get more, it's like statistically shown that they have worse anxiety after therapy because all you're doing is sitting down with someone, and that's all they're talking about is your problem, your issue. And it makes you codependent on a therapist not to be able to do things on your own. So we talk about the next generation and how the next generation is so important. It's like we have the most therapy, we have the most therapeutical drugs, we're the most drugged out country in the world. We should be the happiest. We should be the ones that are the most satisfied, but we're not. We're the absolute worst. We're on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like kids are unhappy, kids are depressed, and granted, social media plays a big part into that. But it's like, why are we treating the issue with all the wrong solutions? All the wrong solutions. And it's just getting worse. It's spiraling out of control.
I think it's the end of the societal lifespan. I mean, you look at the fourth turning, that's what's happening. If you look at the messaging, Leave the World Behind recently came out, which was funded by the Obamas. So there's messaging that they want to push. And now we've got this Civil War movie coming out. So it's more messaging. Just like pre-2020 or pre-COVID, it was all these pandemic movies and pandemic shows and outbreak shows and all this type of stuff. And then what happens that? Now they're saying, okay, conflict, nuclear stuff. Everything's about nuclear bombs and World War III and Civil War and like collapse. That's all these things that are being pushed. Cyber attacks. So it's like them telling you, we have to tell you what's going to happen before it happens.
They start to paint the picture.
Yes.
They're painting the picture, and we talked about this as physically thinking about things, role-playing things through your mind. When it comes from a self-defense standpoint, mentally preparing yourself if you were put into that position. They're doing that for people. They're providing these movies, providing these TV series, and they're painting this picture in their view of the direction that they want to point it. I mean, what was the movie that you said that you were telling me about?
So the movie is called Leave the World Behind. I honestly didn't watch it originally because I was like, it's bullcrap. But I was like, enough people online were like, hey, it's actually worth watching because it does kind of, point to some questions. The other interesting, thing is it's funded by people who are interested in this type of thing panning out. But essentially, it's a cyber attack on the networks, which we all experienced recently. And the grid, all cell phone towers go down, satellites go down, planes are crashing out of the sky because there's no GPS, there's no navigational systems, so there's no air traffic control, deconflicting aircraft. There's ships that are grounding themselves because they rely on a lot of computers, and those are now gone. And so you see what happens with this family that's staying at an Airbnb, and they're like trying to figure out what's going on? Like, I can't get a signal, and I can't watch this show, or my streaming service isn't working. To like, now they're trying to get out of this. I think they're in like Rhode Island or somewhere, and they're trying to get on the highway. No one's on the highway, and they see a bunch of Teslas piled up, blocking off the exits. And it's these Teslas that are driving themselves and purposely blocking the exit. And what was interesting is they had a drone that was flying around, dropping leaflets like a quadcopter, and it was an Iranian message that said death to America. But in another place, because one guy's like, it's definitely the Chinese, and he's like, well, I got a note that it said the Iranians were saying this. But there's another area where it was in Chinese, it said death to America. So it was just interesting to see like what that looks like, how dependent we are on society as a network, and how dependent we are on systems and governments to be able to live. But what would that look like if all communication was lost tomorrow? What would that look like?
Well,
total panic.
Total
chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, total chaos. I mean, you would have everything from, people just stealing and purging basically and molesting children to just pure evil. I think you would have. It would be pure evil that would set in.
I think it would take a few days.
Yeah.
But once there's a few days of like, cops ain't coming.
Correct.
Emergency person ain't coming. No one's going to investigate this.
Yeah.
That's when you start seeing the worst of humanity come out, because it'll be like the purge. It'll be like unless you have a strong moral grounding in the Lord and in the Bible, and you answer to a higher power. If the highest power is the government and the government's gone,
Right. Yeah.
left
I mean, again, I've mentioned this before, but like in a world where truth and information is constantly being changed and falsified, and it's like you've got to have something that you're grounded in. Like where is your moral compass? Like where is your spiritual truth come from? Like so obviously going back to Christianity and, conservative values being important, I think that's where you see a change is through difficulties like that. I mean, maybe it is going to be bad, but you can't really ignite something unless it's dry at first, right? So we're primed for that, right? So I think because you have these disasters, it's really going to create, number one, stronger Christians. I believe that there'll be a refinement process through that, and we've talked about that. But you're also going to have a lot of people that are broken people that have nothing else. They have nothing else. They have nothing else that they can rely on.
Yeah.
So where are you going to go to? And it's like, well, that's where people surrender their lives to Christ, right? In that place of brokenness. So, it's really important for us as Christian men, especially, is to be ready, right? To share that with them, to train now, to get in the reps now, to learn about the Word, to be grounded in the Word now, for when that time comes when we don't have anything and we can be a testimony, we can be an example to other people that, why are you fine? Like, what do you got that you're like, look around you, everything's a disaster, everything's a mess. Well, it's like, I don't base on my beliefs or moral compass on worldly things, because clearly that can be taken away, right? Your money can be taken away. Your cell phone can be taken away. You could lose your house. What do you got? You strip all that away, what do you got?
Yeah.
And then if the answer is nothing, then you're in trouble, because you need to have a better answer than that, in my opinion. But there is an answer, right? And that's
salvation,
right?
Yeah,
That's
salvation.
the good news.
Yep.
So I think that there can be good that comes from it. Obviously it's kind of a black pill, then transition to white pill, but there needs to be that refinement process. I mean, in the Bible, that nations have turned away from God. They've worshipped idols. They sacrificed to Baal, and God continuously tells his people, "You turn away from me, like there's going to be judgment that comes on your nation. You're going to be overtaken by your enemies. You're going to have disease. You're going to have plague upon the land. Like this is the choice that you're making when you turn away from me." And I think, the United States, is there any other country that's more primed for that? I don't think so.
No.
No, I mean, the United States is. I mean, it goes. What you said? You said you were telling.
We're shaping up to be the whore of Babylon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As it talks in Revelations. I mean, we're the number one consumer of sex trafficking, pornography. We facilitate all of it. We're the central hub of all the trade of these illicit goods, and I mean, we're legalizing sin. Is what we're doing. We're making it commonplace to sin and to be okay with it.
Yeah.
And then not only that, we push it on our children.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we create law to set fear. So don't do this, because don't steal this.
Or
And they rule by this, because you're going to get in trouble with that. Where those of true Christian values and believers, they don't steal because it's not right to do, right? That's what you're telling your kids.
That's what I tell my son.
Yeah.
I was like, when I go there to self-checkout, like at Walmart or Publix, I was like, Gabe, I make sure I double check that I don't accidentally not scan anything. Not because I'm afraid to get in trouble. I could care less. Like, obviously, I'm not really doing that, so I'm not worried about it. But I was like, I want there to be no mistake. Like, I'm not a thief. So I will do my due diligence to make sure, that I'm not doing that. I wouldn't even want to accidentally take something, because then I just have another errand. Then I got to run it back to Publix and be like, hey, I accidentally scooped this in my cart. But
It's already there. You can create all the laws you want, but it's already wrote in the book.
Yeah. Right.
It's already there. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of in the book and us being primed for legalizing sin and becoming the whore of Babylon, did you watch that video about Baal? I sent you a video about the Baal monument being erected.
Oh, that was the one that
No,
you showed me.
I wonder why I never had a
where
chance
was
to watch
that
it.
at?
So what ends up happening, there was in 2016, ISIS was big and stuff like that, and they were destroying all these artifacts. Well, they excavated these artifacts from, I think, Iraq or Syria and they reconstructed the archway to Baal, which is the archway that leads into the temple. So technically, you walk through the portal of the archway of Baal to get to the temple to become ready for Baal, to be in Baal's presence and sacrifice your children sacrifice your kids to Baal. And so super evil, like super bad. And they had this dig, and this archway, mind you, is 5 stories tall when fully constructed. It's not a small little like artifact you have in the museum. And there was, I think 2017 or 2016, they had a news article say, hey, we're going to be erecting the archway to the Temple of Baal in Times Square. And the church like freaked out. It was like, no, we're not doing this. Like, we're, not anyway. So it blew up. Even people who weren't Christians were like, nah, that's kind of weird. No. So they took it instead and set it up in London.
They took it to didn't they take it to even more powerful?
Yes. So they take it to London, which is an economic powerhouse. It's one of the biggest, centers of power in the West, honestly, in the world. And they set it up in London. And so it's there for a while. But they also set it up when they unveiled this archway of Baal. It was set on the day of Beltane, which is the first day of the festival to sacrifice your kids to Baal for the harvest. So it's like, no, it's not just some artifact you guys set up to show off and showcase. You are literally ritualistically setting up and reconstructing the Temple of Baal to worship him. And then what they did is they changed the news article, brought the archway to Times Square, had it erected in Times Square right across from City Hall. They did a big wazoo about it, had a huge ceremony. And then after they had it there, they took it to Dubai, the other economic powerhouse. So this thing is a archway of Baal, and guess when that was synced up with? The G7 summit.
Surprise.
So just to like the economic summit of the world, all this type of stuff, and one of the big facilitators of that was Obama.
See, this is the stuff we suspect. This is the stuff we say, and then they're out there proving it.
Yeah,
they're like, "Yep,
in your face."
It's so in your face, and they have to. Higher level occult leaders have to communicate what they're doing because they don't want it to come back on them. So they have to put it out in front of your face because at the end of the day, they're like, well, you saw it. I mean, we had a whole parade, celebrating it, and you missed it. And it's like, it's the same as Alex Jones. It's like, I'm not any sort of Nostradamus. Like, I'm not, they're writing about it.
In
You just have to do a little bit of digging, and you can find it for yourself.
Well, I mean,
you don't even
watch
really
a video.
We're talking about stuff he said he tried to bring to our attention over 20 years ago.
Yeah, and it's so obvious. I mean, they did the same thing with CERN. They did a whole ceremony of opening up a portal and little demon creatures coming through.
Have you seen the video of the
I
ceremony?
haven't.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, even if you're not a Christian, you're like, yep, that's demonic.
Wait, hold on. This is sus, bro.
Yeah, mad sus.
I thought this was some kind of energy thing.
Oh, it's interpretive arts.
Yeah. This looks like a
Interpretive arts.
demonic Stargate.
I mean, it's literally like they're on these weird strings and they're flying around like puppets, and it's like
There's ram's horns.
and they're doing dances and
upside
like
down crosses. It's like,
and it's just like right in front of your face, and like normal people are like, hey, I think this may be opening. They're trying to open up a portal or something because they're colliding particles to create a new antimatter particle. And it's like, you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, there's the video. Watch them. That's what they're doing. That's what they're saying they're going to do. And then we get surprised. Yeah.
That's what they say. They're like, anyways.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got football on Sunday.
Yeah.
My fantasy team's playing.
Yeah, I mean, dude, going back to the Baal portion though, specifically, one of the practices that they would do is they would have temple prostitutes or priestess chicks or whatever that would have sex with the population. And what they would do is they would incentivize a lot of sex inside of these practices for those who worship Baal, so that way they could incentivize having babies.
Yep, which is a sacrifice by
Which
abortion.
you use for sacrifice. And so what are we doing? We have world leaders that are incentivizing Baal worship, and they are incentivizing sexual freedom and revolution and incentivizing abortion.
Yeah. I do want to make it clear. It's like we talk about these scary things, but it's like as Christians, we are representatives of God, the creator of the universe, that don't stand a chance against the Almighty, right?
Yeah.
Jesus is coming back, with a sword. So all of these forces they're going to spend eternity in hell, because obviously they're evil forces perpetrating the most evil things on humanity. But it's like Christians need to realize their spiritual authority in all of this is that we can talk about these scary things. We can talk about ghosts. We can talk about Robert the doll, right? But, we don't have to, I want to make it clear, like, we don't have to fear those things. Yeah. It can be scary, but it's like our authority and our power, who we represent, is so much bigger than all these things that seem very big, right? That's what they're designed to do. They seem to be big, scary, threatening, but that's all they are. They don't stand against the authority of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that to me is very important to remember when we're talking about these big things, these big global events, that it's even more of a reason to understand our authority and who we are. Because even with shooting, like, we go to lizard brain when we come across these things, we want to tense up, we want to ease back. And that's our natural reaction, but we need to operate in human brain, right? At a spiritual level, right? Getting in the Word, praying, putting on the full armor of God, like rebuking those things, like praying over your house, praying over your TV, not allowing those things to come in. Like, the only way that those things can come in is if you allow it to come in, right? So take authority over that. Like, take authority over your family, take authority over your kids. You should be praying over your kids, right? So
Take dominion.
take dominion. It's spiritual pushback, right? So it's something to remember. And I say that because I sometimes struggle with it, because it's easy to get down the rabbit hole and being like, well, this is so daunting. Like, how does anyone even stand a chance against this stuff? And it's like, no. They're the ones that are the lower, the lesser, right? We represent something bigger. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
No,
No,
100%.
it's
100%.
Yeah. You have to find your identity in Christ. You have to learn discernment. And then you have to, learn about the armor of God and putting it on every day and approaching everything in your life with that.
Yeah.
Or you could just stand by and watch it happen and do nothing.
I mean, because we can't do anything. It's God. It's Jesus who's doing that stuff, but he works through us.
Yep.
I think it's going to be at a point where there's so much of this stuff happening where there's going to be a lot of people who are afraid that aren't believers. And we have to, it also doesn't mean that we stick our head in the sand and pretend that nothing's happening or pretend that everything's fine in the world. And the reason why, for me, I've always had a fascination with the spiritual side, the ghost stuff, the UFOs and all that type of stuff. But for me, recently, it's specifically the UFO phenomenon, is there's going to be a great deception. And if you're not, first off, if you're not in the Word, if you are not reading Scripture, you're going to be deceived whether you're staring at it all the time or not, and you have your head in the sand. So if you're not grounded in Scripture, you're going to be deceived. If you're not also paying attention to things that are being told to you by the enemy and being forecasted to you, you will also be deceived. Because remember in Revelation, it says there will be people that come and claim to be me, Jesus. They will claim to be like me. And guess what? They will do miracles and claim to be me.
And the nations will be deceived.
And and almost even the elect. What's crazy is, like, almost even the elect. Even people who are in the Word will almost be deceived. It will be that convincing. So we have to make sure that we're in the Word. And then also for people who are asking us questions that are hard questions about current things and current events, and saying, what does the Bible say to answer this question that is happening right now? What is the Bible's answer to UFOs? How many times have we heard that question? What's the Bible's answer to that? And what does the Bible have to say about, is this real? Are there aliens? Like, what, if that's the case, I heard all religions will crumble. So we have to be equipped where I'm almost like, if you become a believer at this point, like, obviously this happens no matter what time period we're in on earth, but when you become a believer, for those who are listening who are not believers, it is not just any type of task. First off, it's a life-changing experience. Second off, you're picking a side. That's what you're doing. And when you pick a side, that means you are a combatant on the field, and Satan and his enemies of darkness are going to come after you.
100%.
And so you have to be ready.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, it's important to realize these things because it's like, again, you have to focus on it now, obviously, in good times, in successful times, so that when we get to the real thing, it's already there. It's already kind of pre-programmed into your brain.
Yeah. I mean, you don't ever go into a fight without intel.
No.
And so you got to have the intel. However, you can have all the intel in the world. If you're not training, it doesn't matter. So if I'm not in my Bible training and reading scripture and memorizing scripture and praying over my family and praying over my friends and us in this room, what are we really doing? You can't train yourself out of things that are going to be eternal. Right?
No, and for Christians out there, and including us, we have to stop being lukewarm.
Yeah.
The time is over.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus himself says those who are going to be lukewarm, he'll vomit us out of his mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, that says a lot. He's talking about people who believe, people are doing the thing, but they're lukewarm. He doesn't want that.
Yeah. He wants people who are going to, I wouldn't say be offensive,
No,
but
take
be
dominion.
strong. To be strong.
He calls from the beginning, hasn't changed.
No,
We're
he
not
has-
talking
he
about
has-
this.
he has changed it.
Take dominion.
Take dominion. Are we going to stand by? I said earlier today, are we going to be Adam and we just stand by and watch Eve and do nothing?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of modern day churches have failed. I mean, like, I know probably a lot of people listening to this podcast go to church, and I don't want to discourage you from going to church, but really look at what your church is talking about, what your pastor is talking about. It's good to talk about daily things, and Jesus talks about having our daily bread, right? But like, how are Christians really need to grasp with the idea of these realities happening now, and how are we gonna respond to that? Right?
We role play stuff in our mind as far as from so many of us that are prepared, preppers, whatever you want to. We're just naturally prepared in life. We role play things through our head. If I'm at the gas station, what is going to happen? Some two dudes roll up on me. Are people doing? Are you doing that as a Christian? Are you preparing yourself for that?
Yeah.
So.
You want to talk about and this is something that my parents did for me, and I'm very grateful for it. And it is a hard thing to think about. And every time I tell my wife about it, and I said, this is how grounded you need to be in your faith. This is how dedicated you need to be for the Lord. And she cries every time. And this kind of will shock some folks. But when I was growing up, my dad always told me, he says, son, like, I love the Lord so much that if we go, because they're missionaries, if we go to another country and they hold a gun to your head, because we will all be willing to die for Christ. But when they hold a gun to your child's head or your wife's head and say, you better renounce Christ or it's them, are you going to renounce? And my mom and dad, and my dad said, he says, son, I'll see you soon. And that's
see you in heaven.
But are we that strong in our faith? Are
need
we
to be.
that close to the Lord where I'm saying, you can take out my whole family in front of me. You can do terrible things to my family. I will not renounce Christ. Why? Because I know where they're going. But two, my dedication, it needs to be, especially for those who are, family, really strong family oriented, which all of us in this room are. But we have to remember that Christ still comes first, even
full
before our
surrender,
family.
full surrender to Christ. Not a half white flag. It's a full.
And that's a hard
full
question.
on, yeah.
But it's right now is the time to get your mind right for things like that. Because when it comes and you're not ready for it, and things do happen, and you're put in that situation, sometimes the love for your family members ends up outweighing things. You know what I'm saying? And so
if you really loved them,
True.
then you would have understood and you would have been there. Your dad loved you so much,
Yeah.
he knew. You know, he wasn't
He
gonna.
prep me for that prior to.
Yeah. Like, how many churches talk about, philosophies on mid-trib, post-trib, and talk about that or when it's going to happen, but they're not teaching how a church should respond to, right,
It doesn't matter what
the
part
end
of
times.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what part of it, but it's like people have these philosophies in these verses that, prove one way or another, but they're not talking about, well, how do you respond to it when it does happen? Because it's going to happen. Right, we're gonna experience either partial part of it, or all of it, or most of it, some of it. Right, we don't know. But like, I'd like some churches explaining to me, like building me up as far as these scenarios, like how we're actually going to respond to this as Christians, how we should respond as Christians to these seemingly end time events.
It's the same, just like shooting, right? It all starts with fundamentals.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can game it in theory and stuff like that, but if you don't have the fundamentals, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that type of stuff, though, it's a lot of folks think, hey, I'm going to, I don't know if I have the courage or whatever. And there's a story that my dad told me when they were in Thailand and they were doing some stuff. And they actually met a Pakistani man who was captured by ISIS back in the strong point of ISIS days. And so he was actually kidnapped. Him and 13 other Pakistani Christians were kidnapped and brought into Syria and held captive. And the ISIS members were essentially like, hey, every day, like almost like, all right, we're going to take you out. We're going to go kill you, unless you renounce Christ and you never become a Christian again or whatever, renounce him. And they would take them out, do these mock executions like they're getting ready to, and then bring them back in. And he's like, dude, guys in the room were peeing on themselves and terrified, but they would still not renounce Christ. But were they terrified? Absolutely. To the point where they were having natural human fear, but they still were obedient and not renouncing Christ. And what they were doing is every night or whenever they're in their cell, they would start singing worship songs and witnessing to their captors to the point that when they did finally, the ISIS people were like, oh, this is useless. They killed them out of annoyance because they were getting so irritated that these guys were becoming more bold. And the one guy said who survived, he said there was towards the closer end, like days before they were about to be executed, he said there were angels physically walking through the doors. They would see angels holding crowns.
Wow. That's crazy.
And so they were holding crowns and they end up finally getting killed and they let the one guy go. And he said that they're like, hey, go tell the church in Pakistan, like, what's going to happen. We're coming for the rest of you. This is what happens if you're a Christian. And he goes and tells the church and they get more emboldened by like, these guys they were given. And the way that he looked at it, he actually said that he went through a spout of depression because he felt like he was denied the opportunity to receive the crown. Because those who die for the faith, who die for the Lord, not out of fighting other people and going and claiming a holy war, but going and dying out of love for their captors and dying in love for Christ, were given the ultimate sacrifice, and were given the reward. And those saints, those men, are going to come back with Christ in the end times to reign with Him, and they're going to come back in glory. And so it's like, that's the mental state that I want to be in, where I am no longer scared of what people think or what people who watch this podcast and maybe ridicule us. That's fine. Guess what? We're being persecuted for talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
Guess what? Our riches in heaven are going to grow. And if
Great.
you are out there and for folks who listen to us that are believers, it's time to be bold now, because guess what? The reward will be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that talking about priming yourself, having these conversations now, having these podcasts where we're going and hearing this encouragement from other brothers and sisters in the Lord, and then talking to people we are still in a time of peace. We're still in a time of plenty before the famine comes. And when the famine comes, we need to make sure our storehouses are full. But actually, for those who have not experienced what that feels like to know Christ, I want to, if Roy, you're cool with this, I want to hand this over to Roy, because last week you had the opportunity to talk and teach some guys in Georgia, and you had an incredible testimony. If you don't mind talking about it,
All right, I'll try to get through it.
we're gonna cry. It's fine. Just get used to it.
Fine.
I'll try to get through it. So this all started actually. So to start with, a good friend of mine, his father passed away a couple years ago, and I had already been talking with him. Perry is his name. And I had already been talking with Perry about putting together basically a class to do at this men's retreat Bible study thing, and Jai had approached me and said, hey, I'd like to fulfill and kind of go through with what Dad was looking to do. And I said, okay, and I jumped at the opportunity to do it because it was something that Perry was really looking forward to. And I didn't really know what I was expecting to get into outside of like, hey, we're going to have a prayer breakfast, maybe we'll do Sunday service, just kind of, I've been to these things before, but didn't really kind of know what to expect, but outside of really like, hey, I'm just going to go and do some firearms instruction. Okay. When I was approached about it, Eric was going to be out of town teaching another class. And so I asked Seth, hey, are you available to go with me? And actually, Seth, I didn't give you any information today.
You said, yeah, just bring your pistol and a sleeping bag.
So Seth...
The essentials.
Yeah, the essentials. So he has a sleeping bag and his pistol, and I have a sleeping bag and I have a pistol. And we pack up in the truck and we head to Georgia. On the way up to Georgia, prior to that, prior to going to Georgia, it was almost to paint the picture. Friday when we were leaving, before we were going to leave, I needed to go to Lowe's. So I go out in my truck and I'm sitting in my truck. And for those that are close to me know that I just lost my mom probably about 6 months ago, and I lost her actually to suicide. Okay. And we're, if I would have said that a few days ago, I would have broke down in tears. So I lose my mom 6 months ago to lose her. And, I'm sitting out in my truck, and I roll down the windows on both sides, kind of let some of the cool air in, and a red cardinal comes flying through my door, my window, lands on my steering wheel, sitting on my steering wheel. I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I was originally on my phone doing something. I don't even know what I was doing. And actually, I was thinking I was checking to see if my dad had sent me a text message yet, and he hadn't. So I'm looking at this cardinal, and it's just sitting there, and just peaceful, not doing anything, not freaking out, lands on my steering wheel, and then flies out the window. Nothing. So in that moment, I'm like, I haven't received the message from my dad. Let me go check on my dad. So instead of going to Lowe's first. So I drive back to where he's at. He's living on my same land. And I go back there, and I get out of my truck, and I smell this overwhelming power of propane. Tons of propane, just like in the air. It was in a like a mobile home style, like one of the park campers, like that you permanently set up. And I guess I get closer. He has his sliding glass door open and his back door open on it, which letting the cool air in. And I'm getting closer, and it's like so much propane. And I look inside, and he's just sitting in there, like nothing's happening on his computer, watching the news, watching Fox News or whatever,
Watching
Hannity, and I'm like, you don't smell that? And he's like, what? I'm like, propane. The dog is not even sitting inside,
Right?
Like she knows,
Right?
And he's like, no, it must be out of propane. He's 73 years old. Okay, so in his mind, for whatever reason, he thought to walk over to the stove and hit the igniter.
What?
Yeah. So the stove is closed, has a glass top over top of it. He hits the igniter, and it like that, and it just holds it compressed all into that one section. Okay.
Instead of going into the entire.
Yeah. Instead of going into the entire air. Now, I'm assuming I don't know a lot about this. I'm sure some firefighters can probably comment. Todd could probably comment on this as far as the way that works. But the doors on the house was open, so I'm assuming a lot of that propane was escaping. Okay. Whatever it was, as busy as I was that particular day, getting ready to leave to Georgia, I stopped what I was doing for that cardinal slowed me down for enough time to like check my phone. To go check there. So I leave there, and the entire day, this is going through my brain. I tell Seth about it on the ride up there, and it's just like, it's almost like someone is riding in the vehicle with me outside of just Seth that day, as far as what I can explain. Seth and I rode the entire 6-hour drive without a radio on.
Yeah.
No radio. Just talking. Just talking. And it's almost like something else was there riding with me that day. And we get to Georgia. We kind of meet, greet some of the guys, stuff like that. We sit down, and Jai's kind of introducing everybody, and brings John up, which, do you remember John's counseling service? I think it's White
Flag.
Yep.
White Flag Christian Ministries, I think.
I think it's White Flag
counseling.
Christian. Yeah, White Flag Christian Ministries. By the way, if you guys need any kind of counseling, I would highly recommend John.
Yes.
So, he was very good. So John leads off with discussing what the weekend is going to be about. And I'm like, okay, well, this is cool. I didn't realize that we were getting all in. I didn't realize we were getting this. Even Seth said, man, I'm missing out on Friday Bible study, but here it is. We're actually going through a Bible study. So we start going through, John talks about Colossians and gives us the homework of reading some Colossians. And we go back. I'm super tired. Seth does his homework. I don't do my homework.
Well, you started to.
I did
you
start.
Fell asleep.
I fell asleep. So I made it through chapter 1. For you guys that don't know, Colossians is just 4 short chapters. Very, very powerful for you guys that are either new followers or haven't had a chance to really get into it. Chapter 4, or not chapter 4, but those 4 chapters are definitely worth the read. Very, very powerful. Paul is in prison and he's writing a letter. So I would definitely highly suggest read it. So we come back in the morning, we do breakfast, we go through prayer breakfast, and we leave from there after breakfast to go to our portion, which me and Seth are going to be instructing, doing some firearm safety, some, really intro type stuff. And I had a game plan in my mind. I've taught this stuff a million times. I mean, you guys have witnessed it. Chris, you've taught with me before in the past. Eric, we've taught hundreds of classes together. And this type of stuff that I was teaching was I've done thousands and thousands of these classes. Mm-hmm. So I have this game plan in my mind, and I start, and it's like something takes over, and it's like, no, you're doing it this way. You're doing it. You're doing it. You're going to teach that. You're going to teach this differently than what my game plan was. So I stumble a little bit in the beginning, and I get through it, and we progress through the day of teaching this, and really just such a bonding moment with all of these men. There's 30 men there, men that thought that they knew as far as firearm safety and how to handle firearms, and these are guys that have been carrying firearms for quite some time, carrying firearms on a regular basis every single day, religiously, knowing that they leave the house with that pistol in their pocket or inside their waistband as much as anybody else would leave their house with a pocket knife or a cell phone or something like that. Sure. So they leave, and what they really learned that day was how complacent that they were with their firearms. Sure. And how complacent that they were with their firearm safety to a certain extent. So just a really, really good bonding moment. And I get this opportunity to start talking with a lot of the men, and they're approaching me. They're opening up to me. Okay, so I guess they found comfort in me. John said, find somebody to find comfort into them. And that entire weekend so far, I thought I knew who Jesus was. Okay, to put that out there. So I thought I knew who Jesus was. And we go into this evening after dinner, and we're sitting around this campfire. And on the way sitting up to the campfire, Seth's like, man, just listen to the wind howling over top of the trees. It's just...
It was
magical.
surreal.
It was surreal. It was just surreal. So we sit down around this campfire. John goes through chapter 2, I do believe, or chapter 2 and chapter 3, I think. And he's going through it. And at this particular point in time, once he kind of goes through it, you can just feel the air changing. Everything is it's getting, the presence of something is sitting there with us. It's just really opening you up, and it's like you have all of this stuff. For me, I've went through the past 6 months questioning my faith, questioning my life, questioning everything. And I walk around with a trench coat on that's full of lead. That's 200 pounds. I have a rucksack on my back that people continue to just stack weight on it. Hey, carry this weight, carry this weight, carry this weight. And I'm walking around with all this weight, and it's so heavy. And I'm angry most of the time inside, and I'm angry. I've been angry at God. I've been angry at everything. So in this moment, one of the gentlemen get up, and he starts to just go through this process of describing something, and I'm like, I don't really know what he's talking about at this point in time. He's got a garbage can over there, and he's pulling out a paper plate, and he's walking around the garbage can, and this paper plate's laying on the ground. And then he starts talking about how we walk through life, and he's like, you see me walking by this paper plate. He goes, you see how we walk past this? We tend to put our blinders on. We only see what we want to see. And a lot of times we do that when it comes to our faith. We only see what we want to see. Right. We only we put those blinders on and we just walk right past it, and we only see what's directly in front of us. And he sits down, he opens up about his wife having cancer, and she's been battling cancer for the past 13 years on and off, and now while he's up here at this camp, it has come back. So he opens up about that, and then I sit here and I watch this as other men just start to pour their hearts out. We're not talking about soft men here.
Yeah.
No.
We're talking about...
These are dudes you're lucky to get more than just a hello, goodbye, good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah. These are men that don't talk. These are men very much like myself that self-isolate, that don't discuss this stuff.
But like you said, just one after the other, and you could see it. It was like you could see it on their faces. Nope, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. Then one person, then the next person does. Then next, it just kept going through.
It just kept going, and it just kept passing down the line, and I felt compelled to speak myself, and I don't. You guys know that I don't. You guys spend enough time around me, and I don't talk. If you ask me if I'm okay, I just tell you I'm okay. I'm doing all right, knowing that that's a lie.
Right.
And we're sitting there, and these men are just opening up. I'm opening up, and these guys, they truly, at the end of the day, have a warrior spirit inside of them. Like, they're opening up and talking about things that our society and has told us, hey, you can't do that as a man. You gotta stay strong. You can't do this stuff. So all of these men are opening up, and you could just feel this presence that's in the air, and it's incredibly powerful. So we work through that night, and I feel a little bit lighter. I feel a little lighter. Seth and I go back to our camper. We pretty much stay up most of the night because we're kind of energized by this, by the spiritual presence and teaching and everything that's going on that we're witnessing here. And wake up in the morning. Finally fall asleep 2-3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is. Wake up in the morning and have breakfast, and then there's a church that's on the land. How old would you say that church is?
It's got to be late 60s, early 70s, if it wasn't older than that before, if it was renovated.
Yeah, so it's an older church. I've seen this church before going up there to this hunting camp, and it was pretty well worn, and has been sitting there for quite some time. And
no power,
no power, nothing whatsoever. They kind of cleaned it up a little bit. So we go inside, and we enter in, and John, his son. I'll call him John Jr. Gets up there and starts leading a song, and he's went through his first song, and everyone's kind of singing along with him, and he gets into his second one, and now he's finally into his third one, and I'm looking there, I'm looking around, and I'm like thinking in my mind, and I could tell Seth's thinking the exact same thing, like this is what church is, this is. When we talk about church, or we see church, or when God says 2 or more gather, this is what it is. This is church. This is not what we generally get to see every day. Every person in there, most of these men I only met a few hours ago.
And same for them too. A lot of them didn't know each other. Like, there was kind of loose connections, or like pockets of people, and they're like, okay, we know him from there. Like, but they didn't really know each other.
But everyone knew each other. Now in that moment,
they were all brothers in Christ,
all brothers in Christ,
God,
worshiping
that
God.
Morning.
Everyone is this is truly putting Jesus first. It is a solid 2 days of where every man put Jesus first in that moment, with everything that they did. So we're sitting in this church. John Jr. is up there singing. And then all of a sudden, you hear this train that has been daunting all weekend long, as far as just obnoxiously loud, that comes through. And as this train comes through and John's in the middle of the song, it's almost like the train wasn't there, but it was there. It was like it was so soft. How would you explain it the same way?
Yes, it was like it was part of the song.
Yes.
It was just
muted almost.
Yeah, the train horn came in, and then you heard that train start to come through, and then it just faded out. All weekend we heard that train, and it was long and annoying, and you heard the tracks. I mean, you just heard everything. And there you would have thought it was part of the song.
Wow.
As that train came through, the energy that filled that church, this small church that's what, 20 by 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 by 20 church, full of pews, 35 plus men in there.
We packed it in. So 35 men. It was butt to butt, seat to seat. Yeah.
And you feel this presence that comes through as John is singing, and as he's singing, you feel this energy that enters into the room. All weekend long, it was almost like John, the pastor that was leading the service. Also, I will tell you this: it was like he was talking to me the entire weekend. Everything that he spoke of was like it was almost like Jai pre-set this up. It was like, here's all the intel, and I want you to direct this message.
Right.
But I know it wasn't, because it was like John was speaking to everyone.
It was such a universal message,
was a universal
especially to men, you know.
It was such a universal message, but it felt so direct. And this energy comes in to the room. This spiritual energy comes into the room like I've never felt before. And tears start to roll down my eyes. And in that moment, I look over at Seth. But at that moment, right before I look over to Seth, as I'm sitting there, and Seth can probably attest to it, I have my Bible in my hand, and I'm sitting here pretty much with my head down and Bible, and I feel that someone is sitting next to me. Now, there is another man sitting next to me, but someone reaches over and pulls that weight off my back, and takes that weight, every bit of it, off of my shoulders. And for the first time in a long time, and especially the first time in 6 months, I feel free.
Yeah.
I can breathe. I don't have this downward pressure on my shoulders. My neck isn't hurting. It just, everything lifts off my back, and I can't explain it in any other way, but for the fact of that, I literally feel like that someone took something off my back and someone was sitting there with me. And I look over at Seth.
And this all happens right as this train comes blowing through. Seems like part of the song, and it was right at the tail end of this last worship song. And you could tell it was almost like something just went right through Roy. And I saw him. He picks his head up and he kind of looks at me like, "Did you feel that? Like, are we witnessing the same thing right now?" And I was like,
Wow.
And since that moment, like, Roy's head was up. He has been totally like different. I can tell from how he was kind of that weekend, I mean, and how he's been. I mean, 100%.
It was an experience. And then we continue through Sunday worship in this church, and from that moment, I mean, when I walked out of that church, I felt lighter on my feet. I felt energized the entire ride home. We are so energized. Like, I really have been praying, and I've prayed a lot about a lot of stuff, and I've prayed many a times for, God, I'm a big dummy. Like, I'm an ape at the end of the day. I need you to smack me in the face with what you are asking of me here. What I need to be doing. What the purpose of this is. And for the first time, I can tell you, I lost my mom, but I truly found Jesus, and I walked with Jesus.
Yeah.
He didn't just talk to me. I literally, he held my hand this past weekend and walked with me. And I know that he was there. Like, I know that he was there, and I've never felt anything like that. Like I said earlier ago, I thought that I knew who Jesus was. And I just knew of him.
Right.
I mean, you've heard that before.
Yeah.
There's so much truth to that. I just knew of Jesus. Like, in that moment, during that, it was so powerful and so energizing. I got home. I was excited the entire ride home. Me and Seth just couldn't stop talking about it. We're going back through it. And if anything that I can say is that we as Christian men have to start holding each other accountable. to stay within the word. We have to. And if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're in doubt or you think you know who Jesus is and you really only know of him and you're not in prayer, we have to get closer.
Yeah.
We have a mission. We have it's laid out for us.
Yep.
We have a mission. And for the first time I could tell you, and I came in and I told this story to Eric, is I could tell you what our mission is and what our goal is. Like, I feel it. I know it. Everything that we do, as far as for Barrel and Hatchet, everything that we do in life, whether it's my business, whether it's my family, whether it's, I need to arm myself with that scripture, and I have to put Jesus first. Like, Jesus comes before anything. It doesn't matter.
Amen.
It does not matter what it is.
Amen.
Yeah. Great.
The time of the closet Christian is over.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
If we're talking about being proud, Satan does a great job of pushing that message, and we need to stand proud as Christians. And the time of the closet Christian is gone.
Yep. No more being lukewarm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's over, and that's something like I knew we were gonna cry on that one, but
I honestly, I felt
probably started crying the most.
I held it together better, and you know why I held it together better? Because I do feel lighter. Like, I feel
Yeah, you
like
feel better.
I can talk about this. I haven't, those words that I just said, I don't think I've
You
ever
haven't said them out loud.
I haven't said them out loud. I haven't said those words out loud. There's only one person sitting at this table that I've said those words out loud to. And that's it. And I just told all 15 listeners.
oh God, no, I think there's a lot of people, and I think this at this point, like, you know, God's hand is at work, and it takes trials. You know, it took the Israelites being enslaved by the Philistines or being enslaved by the Egyptians to reach out and cry out for help. And that's what it takes. I don't think it's that a lot of people say God did this to me in my life or God caused this tragedy. No. What does God do? He takes something bad and he uses it for good. We have to remember there's still an enemy out there who hates you. He wants to kill, steal, and destroy. But what does God do every time Satan does something that causes a hurt in our life? God goes, all right, cool. You just did that to my servant. You did that to my son. Well, I'm going to go ahead and twist that, and I'm going to use that to build him back up to be stronger, to cause more damage against you and your side, against the enemies of darkness, and to be a better asset for me. And I think that's the whole point of this podcast. You know, I think a lot of it is to talk about things that are happening in current events, but a lot of it also is to encourage the listeners and encourage, obviously encouraging us here, but that encourages, there's so many men who are living in broken homes. And we were interviewed, you know, a couple of guys who've already expressed how broken they were and how close to, you know, making mistakes or the mistakes they have made. But at the end of the day, with all these different podcasts about motivational speakers and everybody wants to be motivated or everybody needs a mindset change, everybody needs Jesus. That's what they need.
That's your motivator. That's you wake up in the morning and the very first thing that you do is put Jesus before you do anything else. And there isn't a pre-workout that you could take
That'll jazz you up.
that's
more.
going to jazz you up more. I mean, once you feel it and it's in you, it's it is truly an experience. Like,
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like we have these dark things that we talk about, but they don't pale in comparison to what you just told about, what you just experienced as a Christian. It's like I'm a big journaler, and like journaling things like that, because you know, even in your darkest moments, you can go back to all of the testimonies that God has brought you through, and it's in detail, and it's fresh in your mind when you wrote it down, and it's like taking a hold of those moments too and being able to pass it on to other people who are in broken situations, using that information, using that experience that you had, and being able to help someone else out of a very desperate, dark situation. So, yeah, it's really encouraging. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
So did the shooters at the end of this event walk away with a little bit more safetyness in mind?
Well, at the end of the day, at the very least, they weren't complacent anymore.
No, they weren't complacent.
They realized that, and the same could be said about how they felt in their walk with Jesus.
Yep.
I think a lot of people had the same realization that they become complacent.
Yep.
That they have put off taking God's mission that He's given us as men to take dominion over this earth. You know, we do that how? Working and keeping it.
Yep.
And we're not we're doing a fine job at working it. You know, everyone's going to work, everyone's doing the stuff. We're not doing a good job at keeping it, protecting.
We are not taking dominion of it, and we have to take dominion of it. It is God has given it to us. He is this it is such a beautiful piece of land. It is. I have had the opportunity and to see parts of it and to see men and to talk. You know, we have our main channel that people reach out to us. We have this podcast channel, and we have our all of our social media aspects, our Instagram, everything, and we are not alone.
Yeah.
You do not have to face this battle by yourself.
Yeah.
Like there is a higher presence there. There are men to walk through it with you. There are women to walk through it with you. I can tell you, I thought my wife was strong. I thought I loved my wife. But man, I can tell you that the woman that she is now, over these past 6 months that I've experienced, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, and it took something strong and it took something very, very powerful. And I can honestly tell you, I'm okay. Like I can say those words.
Right.
Like I am fine. And if you're out there and you are struggling with whatever it is that you're struggling with, there are others here. There is a place that you can look to, and if you don't understand it, there are men that you can talk to that have a better understanding. And us, as those men, have to stay within the Word to be educated, to have the knowledge, to have the wisdom, so we can speak this to these men and these women that are asking the questions.
Yeah.
We have to have our swords out, and they have to be ready.
Yeah.
We can't walk away with it just stowed away.
Yeah.
That's right.
We just can't lock it up in the safe. And judge our knowledge based off of, I said this past weekend, people judge their knowledge based off of how many firearms they own.
Yeah.
You can't judge your knowledge based off of how long you just been going to church.
Right.
Because how many people have been going to church since they were a kid,
Yeah.
and now they're in their mid 40s or 50s, but they're really not in the Word.
Yeah. They know nothing.
They know nothing. They're not in the Word. And we have to arm ourselves. We have to put that armor on. And we have to carry that sword, and we have to know, we have to be able to provide the gospel, provide this information, and to provide this scripture to those that are willing to learn. Just much like we do with our firearms. People seek us for education and knowledge in firearms. They will seek us. We are being vocal. We are preparing ourselves for battle. We are out here. We are telling you, they will seek us, and we have to stay ready.
I think that you said it really, really good, that when you told me when we first got back in the studio, is that we're very good at keeping each other accountable when it comes to guns and training. Like, how fast am I able to quick call you out, Chris, if you end up throwing a Charlie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Very quick.
are we quick, though, to call each other out when it comes to accountability in Christ? And at the end of the day, that's what a fellowship of men who is strong in their faith, who are brothers in Christ, that is the benefit that we've experienced in training, that we also experience as spiritual brothers. So for those who listen to us and to listen or go to this listen to this podcast, you need to have, we talk about community. It's so much more than, who's got the food stores, who's got the radios, who's doing this. It's so much more than that, because guess what? Like, we talk about all this stuff, the intel on the front end. At the end of the day, what this tells me is, things are going to hell in a handbasket when it comes to things of this world, but our kingdom is not of this world.
Nope.
Right.
We got to keep our eyes.
Our kingdom is not of this world. And guess what? There will not be a time, in my opinion, where we feel like it should never be something that replaces the kingdom of Christ. If you're more consumed with the affairs of this country taking control of your life and not saying, well, hey, we know the end of the story, and at the end of the day, America is not the kingdom of God.
No.
Right?
Not even close.
Russia, Asia is not the kingdom of God. wherever you're from, it's not the answer, but the kingdom of God is within us, and we need to make sure that we are constantly keeping each other in check and making sure that we don't fall to our own temptations or the things that the enemy comes and throws at us, because he's going to throw everything he's got to bring you down. So I wanted to offer up if you guys had any last parting words on kind of wrapping up this episode.
No, I mean, my parting words would be kind of the same parting words I gave last time. It's like, going back to the basics, the fundamentals, being grounded in your word, being grounded in the Bible and the word, because things are going to get worse before they get worse, in the words of Risky Krisky, which is true, right? So if that's the case, then I need to be grounded in the stuff now. And to your guys' point, like, memorize the word, right? Get the scripture to where you're memorizing it, where you can spout it off to people.
You may not always have a Bible on you.
Yeah, you may not always have a Bible on you. And obviously, if you're witnessing to someone, it shows that you are aware of the word, that you're a mature Christian, because you know the word, because you're telling it to them without even having to look it up, right? So that would be my encouragement to people, because people often forget that, because we take for granted that we have Bibles, we have apps, right? Memorize the word, like tattoo it on your heart, right?
Imagine if people open their Bibles as much as they open their phones.
Yeah. Crazy.
Go to a gym and look how many times people look at their phone.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I would say, to your point, is, that slogan, it's going to get worse before it gets worse. But when does light shine the brightest? When the times are the darkest. Yeah. The darker the time, the brighter the light shines, the easier it is to find, right? And I think that's something that we consider. And yes, it's going to get worse before it gets worse in the worldly sense. But as far as the opportunities to be able to share Christ, to be able to pass on hope in a hopeless world, to be able to share truth in a world full of lies, to be able to provide that light in the darkness, that time is coming. And that's a time of great harvest. And I kind of wanted to finish off in Colossians chapter 4, kind of, going along with Roy's testimony. And this is Colossians chapter 4, verse 2 through 6. Continue earnestly in prayer, being vigilant in it with thanksgiving. Meanwhile, praying also for us, that God would open to us a door for the word to speak the mystery of Christ, for which I am also in chains, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak. Walk in wisdom toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one.
It's good.
It's more than good, Chris. It's great.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really good. The second best is probably you doing a voice in Guatemalan or whatever.
Oh, I forgot to forget about that.
Nope. Not a chance.
Yeah.
It's
All right. Well, it was great being on the show.
Seth, you got anything for closing words?
Not really. I just make the coffee. I don't do closing words.
You're
My brother in the Lord.
You're so much more than the coffee
Don't
maker.
sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Seth is so humble.
Yeah, I'm so humble. I'm actually writing a book about it. It'll be out next year. In these things, I mean, we obviously hit about Christianity heavy this episode, but it's important. For some of you, I'm sure it's going to be a wake-up call. This is all things. As we talk about training, spiritual warfare, you need to train for that too. You have to be well-rounded, we have to prepare, whatever that looks like. For me, it's my family and being a good father, good husband, being a good friend. It's practicing my my martial arts, whatever that may be, whether it's the pistol, the rifle, jiu-jitsu, and hitting the gym, as you guys can tell. But I'm shaping my body, not for me, but for Christ to be able to work through me and for me to be the best person I can be to accomplish his mission. And we should all be striving for that. It should be a lot more selfless and not selfish.
Yeah.
Great.
The second we stop thinking about ourselves and our wants and our needs and we surrender to Christ, your life's going to be so much easier.
Mine's real simple, and we've said it, and we say it all the time, and we talk about it just as far as the firearm side of it wise goes, and we talked about it this evening here. But hold each other accountable, and do not become complacent. That's it.
Yeah.
I know we take that for granted so much because we have such a tight knit
We
circle
do.
that
And
we're every day we're calling, we're texting, making sure we're all in the Word of God, that we're going to the gym. If I miss a day at the gym, Chris is like, "Where were you?"
Bill called me out yesterday on a live. Yesterday we were on a live. Yeah, on the live video, Bill calls me out and says, "Roy, go gym."
Go Jim.
Go Jim.
Go gym. I mean, at the end of the day,
Typical Bill fashion.
so, you know what though? He's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
right,
and you, I'm not holding my brother in fault. Like I'm not mad at my brother for calling me out.
Right.
Very much. If Seth called me out and said, "Hey, man, your pistol skills are lacking right now," or you know what, dude, when was the last
I
time?
wish they were this week.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it was not me shooting this weekend because I have been shooting like crap, but this weekend I performed, and it wasn't me. It wasn't me performing. There was a higher.
The Lord
power.
was guiding his drawstring.
there was a higher authority pushing through me with such conviction that it was. But yeah, hold each other accountable. If you're out there and you don't have a community, you have a community. If you're listening to us, you watch us on YouTube, you're on IG. There's not a man in this room that wouldn't talk to you. And you know what? I got a whole nother list of them that I can send you down. So you're not alone. You have a community. That's what we are. That's what we're building. That's what Christ. That's what Jesus is telling us to do, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So we're going to hold you accountable, and we are not going to be complacent. So.
All right, guys. Well, make sure you guys go check out our main Barrel and Hatchet channel if you want to watch our different gun stuff that we do have. We do have a lot of our training and gun videos and stuff on our main channel. You can also check out Instagram, which gives you behind the scenes type stuff of what's coming up. Also, like we have, whenever we have things in stock, or we're about to release the Eternal Asset series, which is our shirts that we have with scripture on them, so you can kind of wear your faith on your sleeve and also wear the moral things that you stand by proudly. And then also we are on X, and I'm trying to get good at posting on there, as well as I know a bunch of people asked about the Discord. We're just trying to find a moderator that is able to work that, and we would like I would like the Discord to be a place for you guys where you can have that community, and it's an actual productive where there are folks who are building each other up. Obviously, you can also comment on this video, and there's going to be people who comment on this video that I'm sure will be listening to help out other people. So, anyways, guys, thanks for checking out another HatchetCast episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
We're just going to sit here, continue recording.
I wish it had like epic music that would play at the end.
Hold on. I recorded that.